Chapter 3, Section 3 is slope-intercept form. And slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And to get slope-intercept form, we always start out with point-slope form, the slope we had, or the form we had yesterday. So it says write the equation of each line in slope-intercept form, and there's a point and a slope. So we start with the other form, which is y minus 3 equals 1/2 x minus 2. And you're probably saying to yourself, why in the world would we do that? Well, what we can do is if we solve for y, if we distribute, you have y minus 3, or plus a negative 3, equals 1/2 x minus 1. And then if we add 3 to both sides, that becomes y equals 1/2 x plus 2. So you start with point-slope form and then solve for y, and you have it in slope-intercept form. Letter B, this would be y minus 10 equals negative 2 times x plus 5, point-slope form, and we distribute. Y minus 10 equals negative 2x minus 10. And then from there, adding 10 to both sides, you have y equals negative 2x. Letter C, starting out with point-slope form. And it's point-slope form because they gave you a point and a slope. Distributing, that becomes y minus 5 equals 3x plus 6. And if you add 5 to both sides, that becomes y equals 3x plus 11. Example 2, same thing, added one step. First we need to find our slope, which is y minus y over x minus x. So finding the slope, 2 minus 0, 1 minus a negative 1. That becomes 2 over 2, which is 1. And then I'm going to put this point in. Y minus 2 equals 1 times x minus 1, which becomes y minus 2 equals x minus 1. And if you add 2 to both sides, that becomes y equals x minus 1. So the first thing you had to do there is find your slope. Letter B, finding your slope. 2 minus a negative 1, 0 minus a negative 1. If you zip-zap that, you have a 3. Zip-zap that, you have a 1. So our slope is 3. And I'm going to grab this point this time. That would become y minus 2 equals 3 times 0 minus x. When you distribute, that becomes y plus 2 equals 3x minus 0. And when you subtract 2 from both sides, that becomes y equals 3x minus 2. Letter C, y minus y over x minus x becomes 3 over 4, which is 3/4. I'm going to grab those points, they look a little bit smaller, and put that in to our point slope form. So y minus 2 equals 3/4 x minus 4. When you distribute, y minus 2 equals 3/4 x minus 3. And then adding 2 to both sides, y equals 3/4 x minus 1. Letter D, finding our slope, y minus y over x minus x. You zip zap that, it's 1. And that would be a -2. So our slope will be a -1/2. And you pick the first point this time. Y minus 0 equals -1/2 x plus 2. And as you distribute, that becomes y equals -1/2 x plus a -1. Not a lot of space down there. Letter E, finding your slope, 14 minus a -3.5 over 2 minus 2. That becomes 17.5 over 0. If you divide by 0, that is undefined, which is your straight up and down line. And you'll notice in this case that the x's are the same, so that is x equals 2. And letter F, -4 minus a -4 over 2 minus 5 becomes 0 over -3, which is 0. This means we have a horizontal line, which is a y equals, and in this case our y equals -4. Now this is called slope-intercept because this is your slope and this is your y-intercept. That is where the line crosses your y-axis. So it crosses the up and down, or the y-axis right there. And this is where I really like to use rise over right for your slope. Slope is -4/3. So down 4 and 3 to the right. And your line is right there. Letter B, our y-intercept is 3. Our slope is -2, so you go down 2 and 1 to the right. And your line looks like that. And letter C, our y-intercept is 2. Slope is 1/3, up 1, 3 to the right. And your line looks like that. Coinciding lines, it's basically same line with a different equation. Same line with a different equation. And if you graph coinciding lines, it would be like that. And then the second line would be right over the top of it. So we need to determine here in example 4 whether these are parallel, intersect, coincide, or perpendicular. And I'm going to write a reminder over here. Parallel lines have the same slope, and perpendicular lines are negative reciprocals. So starting out with letter A, slope is the same, slope is not the same. We have a slope of 3 and a slope of -3. So there's no relationship here. So those two just intersect. Letter B, our slope is 1/3. Our slope on this one, this is in standard form, so we do -a over b, which would be -2 over -6, which is 1/3. So our slopes are the same. Now we need to check and see if these are parallel or if they are coinciding, if they are the same lines. So for this one, we're going to have to solve right here for y. We are going to subtract 2x from both sides, and that becomes -6y equals -2x plus 12. And then we divide right here by -6, and we will have y equals 1/3 x plus a -2. So our slopes are the same, but if you look at your y-intercepts, they are different. Since the y-intercepts are different, those are parallel. And I'm going to take just a quick second to show you what happens when we graph these. If you to go to y equals 1 divided by 3 x plus 5, and down here 1 divided by 3x plus a -2. If you graph that, that's the line that crosses at 5, and that's the line that crosses at -2, and that's my graphing calculator batteries dying. There's your two equations right there. Two lines are parallel. Letter C, looking at the slope right here, our slope is -2. To get our slope of this one, we need to do -a over b, which would be -2 over -4, which would be 1/2. If our slopes are 1/2 and -2, those are negative reciprocals, so those are perpendicular. Letter D, slope of this first one is -a over b. Slope of this one is -a over b. So we have a -3/5 and a +3/5. There's no relationship between those, so those are intersecting lines. Letter E, slope is 3, and we need to decide whether these are parallel or coincident. So we need to solve right here. That becomes y minus 5, excuse me, equals 3x minus 1. And if we add 5 to both sides, forgot to distribute the 3. 3 times -1 is -3. And so if we distribute, you end up with y equals 3x plus 2. And if you take a look at that, those two are the same equation. So those are coincident or they coincide. Those are the same line. Letter F, slope right here is -1/2. Slope right here will be -a over b, which is -1/2. So we need to solve this one for y, and I'm going to rewrite it. X plus 2y equals -4. You subtract x from both sides, that becomes 2y equals -x minus 4. And dividing everything by 2, that would be y equals negative 1/2 x plus a negative 2. Here your slopes are the same. Your y-intercepts are different, so those lines are parallel. Letter G, your slope is negative 4. Here your slope is 1/4. So negative 4 and 1/4, those are negative reciprocals. So those lines are perpendicular. And letter H, those have the same slope. So we need to see if they're parallel or if they coincide. We're going to distribute here, and that becomes y minus 4 equals a negative 2x plus a negative 4. And if you add 4 to both sides, that becomes y equals negative 2x. Those are the same line, so those coincide or are coincident. And example 5, we are asked to write an equation in slope-intercept form for each line. And remember, we always start with the other one. We want a line parallel. Parallel lines have the same slope, so that's the slope we're going to use. And we are going to use this point. We start with y minus 5 equals 2 times x plus 4. That is in point slope form. And now you distribute. Y minus 5 equals 2x plus 8. And then adding 5 to both sides, you have y equals 2x plus 13. Letter B, we want a line perpendicular. So our slope here will be the negative reciprocal or opposite reciprocal, which will be negative 4. And then that point. So we will have y minus 2 equals negative 4 times x minus 6. As you distribute, y minus 2 equals negative 4x plus 24. And then from there you add 2 to both sides, and you have y equals negative 4x plus 26. You start with point slope form, and then you distribute, and then this is slope intercept form. Couple more questions at the top of the next page. Parallel. That means our slopes are going to be the same. We're going to use negative 1/3. With this point, you will have y minus 4 equals negative 1/3 x plus 2. As you distribute, y minus 4 equals negative 1/3 x plus a negative 2/3. And when we add 4 to both sides, you will have y equals negative 1/3 x. And on my graphing calculator, hope my batteries last here, I'm going to do negative 2/3. So negative 2 divided by 3 plus 4. And that is going to be 3.3 repeating, or 3 1/3. Letter D, we want a line perpendicular. So we need to come up with a new slope. This slope was negative 3. So our new slope will be 1/3. And then that becomes y minus 2 equals 1/3 x minus 6. As you distribute, y minus 2 equals 1/3 x minus 2. And if you add 2 to both sides, you end up with y equals 1/3 x. Letter E, this is standard form. And to get our slope, we do negative a over b. So that will be negative 3 over negative 6, which is 1/2. And since we want parallel, that's the slope we're going to use. This becomes y minus 5 equals 1/2 x plus 4. As you distribute, that becomes y minus 5 equals 1/2 x plus 2. And if you add 5 to both sides, you have y equals 1/2 x plus 7. And the last one, you want a line perpendicular. The slope right now is negative a over b. So negative 2 over 6, which is 1/3. And then we use this point, y minus 1 equals 1/3 x plus 2. That becomes y minus 1 equals 1/3 x plus 2/3. And when you add 1 to both sides, you get y equals 1/3 x plus 1 and 2/3.